Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, I do videos on creepy and disturbing things. Today we're going to be talking about the very fascinating Japanese urban legend Gozu, also known as cowhead. What's interesting about this one is that the urban legend is not actually the story itself, but rather the urban legend is about the story. But if you're like me, you're also dying to know what the actual story is too. So after a lot of digging, I was able to find at least pieces of the story so you can get a general idea of what it is about. And we're going to talk about that after we talk about the urban legend. So here's the actual urban legend. There once was a story that existed that people called cowhead or Gozu. The written story was discovered in Japan all the way back in the 17th century. Legend has it that it was the scariest story that anyone has ever written. In fact, it's so scary that anyone who hears the whole narration of the story from beginning to end will shake so heavily from fright that they will die a few days later. It's rumored that we know the story exists because in Japan we have found old written pieces that do mention the story. However, in these writings it only references the title of the story and just mentions that it is a story that is just too terrible to tell. It's believed that any copies of the story that may have actually existed were destroyed many years ago. A few copies did allegedly survive, but even those were cut into pieces and sent to different parts of the country. So the urban legend goes that only pieces of the story exist today, but you cannot find the full story beginning to end anywhere. And of course, anybody who has heard the whole story, of course, they don't live long enough to be able to repeat the whole thing or write it down. The most popular story about this urban legend that you'll find is one of an elementary school teacher who somehow got a hold of the original full story. It's said that he was taking his elementary school class on a school trip one day, and this particular elementary school teacher was known for telling ghost stories to his kids when they were on the bus on the way to a field trip. The kids would often get really rambunctious and out of control on the bus, and the teacher had found over the years that telling ghost stories got them very quiet and would have them very engaged with him rather than going crazy on the bus. On this particular ride, he told the kids that he was going to tell them the tale of the cowhead. But he only just got started on the story when many of the children started screaming, others begging for him to stop. But the weirdest part was the teacher wouldn't stop. Or rather, he couldn't stop. The surviving children say that the teacher became possessed when he started telling the story. He got this weird blank stare on his face, and he continued to tell the story even as the children begged him to stop. After finishing the story, it wasn't until about an hour later when the teacher finally snapped out of it. He snapped out of it to find that the bus had crashed into a ditch. He looked around in horror to see that all of the children had collapsed and were foaming at the mouth. The bus driver, on the other hand, was laying over the wheel, pale and unresponsive and shivering. Nobody knows what happened to all of the children after that, although we know that at least some of them survived because they told this story. And we also know that the teacher never told the story again. So that's the actual urban legend. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I was desperate to find what this story was about. Of course, to my great disappointment, you cannot find the full story anywhere. It literally doesn't exist. So after doing a lot of digging, I did find at least pieces of the story so you can get an idea of what it might be about. If you're very superstitious, this might be the time to click off this video, but I'm making this video, so I read all about this, and of course I'm fine. And also, as we know, it's just an urban legend. So this is the first version. It is from the website Scary for Kids, and it said that there is a summary of the first part of the full story in Japanese, and this is translated to English as best as we know. There's a little deserted village in the middle of nowhere, and archaeologists are digging to find why nobody lives there. They unearth a weird skeleton with the head of a cow and the body of a man. They do research and find out that years before there was a famine. The story then flashes back to the time of the famine. Everybody in the village is starving. They eat all the cows and horses, then they start on the pets, dogs, and cats, etc. Then there's nothing left, and people are dying from lack of food. One day, a strange figure wanders into the village. He has the head of a cow and the body of a man. The starving villagers attack him, brutally kill him, ripping him limb from limb, and eat him. That's when the village becomes cursed and all hell breaks loose. And that's where the Japanese summary ends. So I think the point of this version is that's how it starts, but the truly scary stuff that horrifies people until they possibly die from fright happens after that, and what happens to the village after they become cursed. And then I found another version from Dark Horror Tales website, and this version is a little different. Some say Gozu is supposed to be the gatekeeper of hell, the first creature you see when you enter. Others tell a story of a village facing famine and gorging upon the first living creature they see. Apparently it is Gozu, half man, half cow. Another version is that a family was starving, and as the father had to go elsewhere for work or foraging, as it was winter and they were without shelter or blankets, the father slices open a cow and tells his wife and son to take shelter. After that, things get a bit muddled. Summer arrives and the wife and son still use the cow for shelter, even though they were explicitly told not to by the father. Angered that his promise was broken, he appears to them and starts to hack the cow. His wife helps her son run away and is unfortunately beheaded. The son runs to a nearby village, but the father, now wearing the head of a cow as a mask, hunts him down. He eventually kills the son, and in turn, the villagers kill the father and feast on him as they were facing famine. This inadvertently caused a curse, and everyone who ate the cow and the father dies. And so it seems that most versions of the story seems to be a very long time ago where a village gets cursed after going through a famine and they eat things that they shouldn't. So I know this is kind of a short video for today, but I really wanted to talk about this very fascinating urban legend that I found. Please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Leave this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I will see everybody in the next one.